And we are back. Gridiron 360 in the house. Quarantine day 4.
Distancing.
Social distancing. I posted, did you see the thing I shared on Facebook this morning?
No, I didn't see it.
Oh, it was our buddy Sebastian Maniscalco talking. He's like, it said I've been social distancing from all my whole life, and it was a bit from one of his stand-ups about going to the pool, and he's like, yeah, I go off to the side, I go away from people, I get myself set up, I get the 3 towels neat. Funny guy.
Yeah, definitely check him out. He is a character.
Yes. All right. So we're back. We're talking free agency, and we're going to wrap up today with the AFC West. Sorry for any delays getting some of that stuff up, but it'll be out there hopefully today, tomorrow, all of it. Dave and Bill here. We're going to start today as we have the past few because it is Thursday the 19th. And free agency is in full swing. There was a lot of chit-chat prior to trades being made, cuts, deals being done on the surface but not inked. So those are all starting to come to fruition, being that yesterday, the 18th, was the green light, and things are getting a little nutty out there. But some interesting things happening, and I think we said it the other day, considering we have no sports and everybody is on lockdown, we still have this. I mean, you don't have to be next to somebody nowadays to fax a contract and sign it, or fax. Now you can scan an email or just send it via text and have like an auto sign. But this stuff is still rocking and rolling, so we have a lot to catch you up on. So we're going to go in alphabetical order. This is stuff we're pulling off of NFL.com. We're going to start with the Arizona Cardinals and just update you on the stuff that we haven't as of yet. We may end up bringing in some of the stuff we've talked about already, but trying to touch on the things that we haven't. So Arizona, let's get started. The man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Lawrence Fitzhume. Larry Fitzgerald, wide receiver, re-signs with the Cardinals on a 1-year deal worth up to $11 million with incentives. They also most recently brought in linebacker Devin Kennard from the Detroit Lions, drafted a few years back by my New York Giants.
I like that one. That's a nice move for them.
He's not bad, dude.
He's a team captain kind of guy. They need some leadership on that defense. It's lost a lot of guys. I think, a man in the middle, it's a good pickup for them.
Yeah, I mean, this is a kid that came out of Southern Cal and was pretty good when he came out, and I always thought he did well for us in New York. So, I mean, but unfortunately,
not a flash guy necessarily, but an anchor guy.
Yep. He agreed on a 3-year, $20 million deal with $12.25 guaranteed. I think that covers all of them. We'll move on with the A's, the Atlanta Falcons. The biggest note since we last updated you, we know that they had let go of outside linebacker Vic Beasley, who was picked up by the Tennessee Titans. I think that was a 1-year prove-it deal.
Yeah, about a little under 10.
So they go out and bring in edge rusher Dante Fowler Jr. from the Los Angeles Rams. Sign him to a 3-year deal worth up to $46 million. Comments there before we move on? Because we had talked. I mean, they're the ones in trouble.
Let me say this. They have. I got to see how they're going to fit this under the cap, and they have needs, and certainly that's a need on the surface of player. I mean, I like it because they bring in a little bit more size. One of the challenges Vic Beasley had was, he's just light. And if you don't have a high motor and you're not speed on a defense that really, I mean, other than Grady Jarrett, really the defensive line for a while has left a little bit to be desired. Mm-hmm. And Grady Jarrett, remember, is an undersized player at his position. He's a talented one, but he is undersized.
You can't have the whole defense like that.
Yeah, so I like it on that aspect, but I struggle with the idea that we talked about what a problem this team has with cap space. If anything they got to do to blow it up is they got to start getting younger. They didn't really do that with this.
True.
And so I don't know if I really see it. I don't know. My guess is they had to defer. I'm gonna have to look at it. Everybody's starting to renegotiate contracts and those things to fit under the cap. But my guess is this is deferred money, which makes him another one of those guys that maybe 2-3 years down the line, if that's the case, that they can't cut because they owe so much.
Yep.
So I don't know. I guess, like I said, as a player, it's good, I think. I mean, and again, Fowler is not an enormous, and
No.
he definitely fits better as a 3-4 outside rush linebacker from a size perspective.
Yep.
But he did play on a 4-3-M. But remember, he played inside with a guy like Aaron Donald, who is about as good a disruptor as you're going to see in the NFL from the inside. Yeah.
Yep.
So I don't know. I guess I just don't understand. I would have gone a lot more youth, but they did what they did.
All right, moving on to the Bees, the Baltimore Ravens. I don't think much has changed. We talked about them bringing in Brockers from L.A. They brought in Calais Campbell from Jacksonville. They tagged Judon. They re-signed Skura, their center.
Yep.
Moving on to the Buffalo Bills. Talked about a lot of them. A couple new additions. Mario Addison, edge rusher from the Carolina Panthers, agrees to a 3-year, $30.45 million deal, including $15.25 million in guarantees. They also brought in defensive tackle Vernon Butler. Signed with them on a 2-year deal worth up to $16 million and 9.3 guaranteed. We touched on them adding the other day Mr. Stephon Diggs from the Vikings. We also talked about them adding Josh Norman from the Redskins. Couple other additions. Quentin Jefferson, defensive end, is expected to sign a 2-year deal with the Bills. And Quentin Spann, offensive guard, he has re-signed with the Bills on a 3-year, $15 million contract. Okay? Yep. Let's move on to Carolina. They obviously are looking to part with Cam Newton. It's pretty much official now. And in re-signing or having the exclusive rights free agent signing to backup and interim starter Kyle Allen at quarterback. He has been given a 1-year extension. They also re-signed safety Trey Boston on a 3-year, $18 million deal, 9.5 in the first year. We talked about them bringing in Teddy Bridgewater. Again, falls in suit with Cam Newton news. John Miller, guard, signed with the Panthers for 1 year, $4 million. We talked about Russ Okung. They also brought in Seth Roberts, wide receiver from Baltimore, on a new deal. Or was he with Baltimore last year? He was, wasn't he? Check it out. Signed a new deal with the Panthers, but we don't have the terms on that. And last but not least, Stephen Weatherly, defensive end, agreed to a 2-year, $12.5 million deal.
Something to note here, and we had made this comment, and I guess this is going to be true of a lot of the trades, because we were curious to why it says the Panthers tentatively agreed to the Okun versus sending Trey Turner out to the Chargers. I didn't even think of this, and this makes complete sense. To live in the world of the coronavirus. Teams are being very careful to announce trades, and this could be an issue, and I bring this up because Cam Newton, even though there's a concern now that there might not be a taker for Cam Newton, which could lead to him getting cut, just given where the quarterback market has gone. But part of this process of a trade is you have to pass a physical.
Yep.
With the inability to bring players into facilities right now, they can't get the physicals done.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see that tentative piece be around until they solve it. I don't know how they're going to solve this, but and they said that teams are going to be cautious to announce trades as done, consider them done on players that may be questionable with injury. So just something to note. I didn't even think of that, but that makes complete sense.
Right now, I think if he's going to get signed, I think the biggest taker is the Chargers.
For Cam?
For Cam.
Yeah, in that note,
but that's if he passes the physical.
Chargers have come out and said they are not going to make a move, and they're going to ride with Tyrod Taylor in the free agency market. They have actually officially said that. We'll see how that plays out. We'll see if he maybe becomes a non-trade partner because he's cut. Again, there's nothing that has to come back. Do they get involved with that? But also that seems to point at a team that could be aggressive in the quarterback market on the QBs for the draft.
It's got to be one or the other. I mean, Tyrod Taylor is great for a stopgap, but I think a lot of the if the Charger fans believe that Tyrod Taylor is going to be the guy, they are sorely mistaken. That I think, if anything, it's more smoke and mirrors from the Chargers camp saying something like that.
Yes.
They're going to make a move. They're either going to go grab Cam, because I don't know really who else would be worth a damn out there, or they're going to draft a quarterback, or they're going to do both.
Yeah, I mean, the only guys really out there right now, after
Flacco?
all that, I mean, if you're, again, getting to cut guys, but the guys out there that have been talked about are obviously recently Cam and then Andy Dalton. Everybody else has been really snatched up.
Nothing has been said about Andy Dalton. So
Right.
All right, let's move on. Your Chicago Bears. Why don't you go through them, because it's your team.
All right, well, we already talked about they re-upped before the free agent signing period, Danny Trevathan. That kind of coincided with a move we talked about, which was probably their other option was Nick Kwiatkowski getting a shot, and he actually went out to Las Vegas. They also signed Jimmy Graham, widely panned as a bad move, and as a fan, I am not excited about that one. But in the last day and a half, a big move they made was signing Robert Quinn, an edge rusher from the Dallas Cowboys, to a 5-year, $70 million deal. That includes $30 million up front. Besides that, and then I'll kind of circle back on him, they also traded for Nick Foles. There's been talk the Bears wanted competition. They kicked the tires on Teddy Bridgewater, I think, found that they couldn't get that done. There was some talk about Cam Newton when he was getting released. Nick Foles, I guess, legitimately more so than Chase Daniel presses Trubisky. Trubisky needs it. I think the Bears are in a bad situation at quarterback. I don't know that he really upgrades. He just offers he does offer a better option than Chase Daniel.
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's going to push him a little more.
But it's an expensive deal. Now, what I have looked at, because now Jacksonville ate the dead money this year, which is like $18 million.
$19 million in dead. Jacksonville ate it to get rid of him. So what, is there another 11, I think?
Yeah, plus his contract. What my understanding is this is really where it binds the Bears is really for 2 years, where they're going to have a significant cap hit if they move them, which, again, I don't think is a bad deal because you set this defense up to win now. I think they're going to have problems in 2 years if they don't hit the lottery, and right now I don't know that that's happening. The Robert Quinn deal, what's important about that is it actually was a sign of them giving up on Leonard Floyd, who was a top 10 draft pick for the Bears. They traded up a couple spots to get him. There was talk, because the Giants wanted him, was the belief. The Giants even looked at picking him up after they cut him, but when it went a different route, I think he was probably a little more expensive than what they wanted to spend. He's always been on the light side. His sack numbers have gone down year after year, so I don't mind it. One thing I did see, and then I'll leave this one alone, is that Robert Quinn's problem when he was playing for Miami and he moved to Dallas was he did not like the idea of being upright in a 3-4, and that is what the Bears run, so he likes his hand in the dirt. Again, I think he is better from a pass rushing perspective. Again, the reason why Khalil Mack has really struggled with the Bears between the injury last year, and by struggling means he's commanding triple teams. Akeem Hicks being out was huge. I think that opens it up, but I also think Robert Quinn offers more from the pressure standpoint on the opposite side.
Yep.
So, that's where they're at.
The Foles deal was pretty much the biggest splash that we've heard in a couple days post, which we haven't even brought up, and we'll get to. Mr. Tom Brady's deal, which obviously rocked the world. But we'll get to them. We'll get there. Wait for the Bucks. All right, Dave, let's go to the Bengals.
All right, Bengals. We obviously already talked about A.J. Green getting tagged, and then they kind of went a little bit quiet. Jumped on the board late yesterday and through, I don't know if some of these were this morning, but they signed Mackenzie Alexander to a 1-year, $4 million deal. I kind of like that one. I mean,
coming from Minnesota.
Yeah, he's
cornerback.
He's not the guy. Actually, they took two Minnesota, right? Trey Waynes was
Trey
also.
Waynes as well.
They also agreed to a 3-year, $42 million contract with Trey Waynes. Interesting to see. What does that mean for Drake Kirkpatrick? Do they do something there to free up some room? Also signed DJ Reader to a 4-year, $53 million contract.
He is the highest paid now defensive tackle.
Well, he can't be above what's his name? The guy in Rams.
Donald.
Yeah. Donald's the second highest paid defensive player in the NFL. He might be the highest paid of this draft, of this free agent recruit.
Maybe.
Now, here's my thing: is I like DJ Reader. I think he's a very good player. I don't know if he's that good, dollar wise. But here's the deal: when you're in free agency, that's what it is. It's a buyer beware because you pay a hefty price for this. It is definitely an addition to their defense. It's a stronger defense with him. And again, that question starts to what happens. Do you start looking to do something with a Carlos Dunlap and?
Well, he is younger than those guys.
Oh yeah,
so.
the Dunlap and who's the other guy? Geno Atkins. So again, plays a little bit different position, but they got to figure out how to spread some of that money around on the line.
Okay, how about the Browns?
All right, Browns. We talked a bunch about them. Probably a little smaller plays. You know, we already talked about Conklin. Andrew Billings, I don't think we talked about that. Looks like more of a rotational guy in a 1 year, $3.5 million deal that's fully guaranteed. Talked about Hooper. Kareem Hunt was given a second-round tender. Love that thing. I think this team needs to go running focused. I think he came back and actually showed a lot of ability in the last 8 weeks of the season, considering he had been sitting for so long. Also, and this is another interesting one, they acquired in a trade with the Broncos, Andy Janovich. Now, that kind of leads me to believe that they're going to go more running heavy. So
he's a fullback.
Right. So it could be interesting with Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. You know, they played both of those guys in the backfield. Now you add this guy to the mix. Maybe a little bit different look. And then also signed a 1 year deal. There's no terms yet with Carlos Joseph at safety. That was an area on defense that they probably wanted
Brought
to get
him in from the Raiders.
A little extra strength on. So, you know, they're making moves. And they, much like I would say the Bears, are playing for right now. And both of those teams did not have good years last year. So they're going to need both those teams are going to need a pretty big burst from last year to this year.
Sure. All right, we're moving on to the D's, the Dallas Cowboys, and I'll run through it as quickly as I can. Anthony Brown, cornerback, signed a 3-year deal worth $15.5 million. Kai Forbath, kicker, with the Cowboys already, has re-signed. Terms not yet disclosed. We talked about Blake Jarwin, tight end. He re-signed with them in a deal, 3-year deal worth up to 24.25 and 9.25 guaranteed. They re-signed linebacker Sean Lee, a really kind of a captain, one of the heart and soul of their defenses, even though he's now kind of playing second fiddle to Van Der Esch and Jalen Smith, but he's still
very team-friendly deal. So there was talk about him retiring.
It's 1 year, $4.5 million with 2 guaranteed. Joe Looney, center guard, re-signed with the Cowboys on a 1-year deal. Big one here, Gerald McCoy, defensive tackle, has been brought in with the Cowboys, signed a 3-year, $18.3 million deal. That can reach about 20 with incentives.
I like that one. Yep. I think that's a reasonable cap hit for a guy that showed he still had some left in the tank after Tampa got rid of him.
That's right. Dak Prescott got tagged. We said that. And then last but not least, safety Darian Thompson has re-signed with the Cowboys. Moving on to the Broncos. We talked about them picking up A.J. Bouye, cornerback from Jacksonville. Also made a big deal with Pro Bowler Jarrell Casey from the Tennessee Titans defensive line in exchange for a 7th-round pick this year. They also signed, they agreed to a 4-year, $44 million deal with 25 guaranteed for offensive guard Graham Glasgow.
Yeah, he was pretty coveted. There was probably about 5 or 6 teams that were looking at him, and certainly the Lions were wanting to re-sign him, and it didn't work out.
Yep. Moving on to the Detroit Lions, Jamie Collins, linebacker from the New England Patriots, agreed to a 3-year, $30 million deal with 18 fully guaranteed. Another Patriot going to Matt Patricia, a former defensive coordinator. Let's see. Chase Daniel, backup quarterback, agreed to a deal with the Lions. Duron Harmon, D-back, acquired also from New England in a trade, along with a 2020 7th-round pick, which is number 235 overall, and a 2020 5th-round pick, number 172 overall.
That's the 2020 5th-rounder is going back to New England.
Yes, it's going back
Detroit.
to New England, right. They got the Lions got Harmon and the 7th in exchange for the 5th. Here's a guy that I was kind of hoping the Giants might look at, a former Clemson defensive back, safety Jaron Kearse. He is the nephew of the Freak. And he was a safety with Minnesota. He is now with Detroit on a 1-year, $2.75 million deal. A couple other names. We talked about Vaitai on the offensive tackle position. They brought in Danny Shelton on the D-line,
Yep.
who agrees to a 2-year, $8 million deal. And they also bring in from Atlanta cornerback Desmond Trufant, who was cut on a two-year, $21 million deal.
Yep. So writing was on the wall, and we'll get to that in a minute. But Darius Slay, who was a heavy target for being moved last year, didn't end up getting moved. Wished Desmond Trufant well, then said, "When's it my turn to get loose?" And he did.
Yes, and he did. Let's see. We're moving on to the Packers. Talked about them bringing in Christian Kirksey. A couple other things to note. They re-signed tight end Mercedes Lewis to a 1-year deal, base value of $2.25 million with $1 million guaranteed. He's a little long in the tooth, but just I guess a safety net.
Yep.
If they don't find anyone in free agency or don't draft anybody. Rick Wagner, offensive tackle, has agreed terms with the Packers. Moving on, Houston Texans. We talked a lot about them. We already talked them bringing in Randall Cobb, wide receiver from the Cowboys. They re-signed kicker Kaimi Fairbairn. They re-signed tight end Darren Fells. They bring in David Johnson, running back from Arizona, in that trade with Nuke. We talked about them re-signing Bradley Roby to a 3-year, $36 million deal. Last thing I don't think we did note is backup quarterback A.J. McCarron, who was already with the Texans, is re-signed on a $1-year, $4 million deal. 3.75 is fully guaranteed. Moving on, Indianapolis Colts. I think we talked all about them. Buckner, yep. Rivers.
I think Rivers.
Anthony Costanzo, offensive tackle.
I think the interesting part we didn't touch on with Rivers. We talked yesterday, and it was. They were definitely, or the day before, they were definitely looking at bringing in Rivers in. Apparently, contracts were getting negotiated. You and I had both talked. We thought maybe a 3-year deal with 2 years on the money. Very interesting. They went 1-year deal, which surprises me a little bit. Rivers went $25 million guaranteed, but they also made note that he could definitely be a franchise tag candidate for the following year and fit in with their salary cap. So something to kind of keep an eye on is to see how that plays.
Sure. All right, where are we?
Jacksonville.
All right, they bring in Darquez Dennard, cornerback, agrees to a 3-year, $13.5 million deal with $6 million guaranteed. Not sure if we mentioned Joe Schobert, linebacker, agreed to 5 years, $53.75 million with $22.5 guaranteed. And last but not least, Tyler Shatley, center guard, is re-signing with the Jaguars on 1 year, $1.51 million guarantee, or $1.51 million 1-year deal with $600,000 guaranteed. Kansas City Chiefs, talked about them tagging Chris Jones, D tackle. Damian Williams was re-signed on $2.3 million contract.
Yep.
Why don't you hit us with the Raiders next year?
All right, Raiders. Again, we already mentioned probably their biggest first signing was Nick Kwiatkowski from the Bears. We talked a little bit about that already. This is a team that also went out and got Eli Apple, signed him, as the as the Saints look to upgrade their backup or number 2 corner. Sorry, we already talked about Mariota. So what they have done since then, interesting, signed Jason Witten. A little bit surprised on both ends. Not a big deal from what I understand, but it is just a 1-year deal. But they're not announcing the terms. I've heard $5 million. Again, remember this team has Darren Waller, who blew up and came onto the scene, particularly the first half of the year. But they also went out and got DN Carl Nassib on a 3-year, $25 million deal. $17 million of that fully guaranteed. Could have a value up to $28 million. Their linebacking core took a big upgrade too as well with the signing of Corey Littleton. He was pretty sought after. He got a 3-year, $36 million deal. So they've revamped their linebacking core pretty quickly there. And I believe I didn't mention this, he comes from the Dallas Cowboys. Jeff Heath, the safety, was signed for a 2-year, $8 million deal. So the Raiders went out and made some moves. They got some cap space that they chewed up. Kind of interesting, I think. It makes their defense a little bit stronger than what they've been in the past. So we'll see how that plays out. Talked about the Chargers. All right. So we mentioned the Trey Turner trade. Again, that's still quote-unquote tentative, but looks like it'll play. Hunter Henry franchise tag. Austin Eckler signed. I think we did talk about Brian Balaga. They signed a 3-year, $30 million deal.
I don't know that we did.
Okay, well, he got a 3-year, $30 million deal. That's your tackle coming over from Green Bay. Aaron, how you feeling about that one, buddy? So we'll get into that. But also signed recently Chris Harris
Big.
to a 2-year, $17 million contract. You'll remember he was the subject of a lot of trade rumors at the corner position last year for Denver. And then I think last but not least is Linval Joseph, D tackle, 2 years, $17 million deal that they got him for. He can get up to 19 with incentives. And Linval was in Minnesota last year, so
he was with the Giants years ago. He's a good guy. He's a guy that can really eat up space and stuff runs.
Minnesota had a lot of money tapped into their defense, and they made some pretty significant moves this year in trading out some of those guys. Remember, Xavier Rhodes is still on the market now.
You've got McKenzie gone. You've got J-Ron gone. Now you've got this guy Linval gone. You've got what's his name still out there? I think is their DN is a free agent.
Griffin.
Yeah, Everson Griffin.
Everson Griffin.
I don't want to say Kendrick. So, yeah, I mean they're trying to free up some dough on that defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and we'll move on to Miami, who obviously has been active.
What about the Rams?
Did I miss the Rams?
You missed the Rams.
I did miss the Rams. My apologies.
That's all right. Do Rams and then do Miami.
So the Rams. Interesting. We already talked about Leonard Floyd, their loss of Dante Fowler. They went and signed him on a 1-year, $10 million deal, fully guaranteed.
You had said the Giants did have some interest, but
I don't think they wanted to pay that $13 million.
No, we'll see what happens now if we're still looking for Clowney.
Yep, that's a possibility. They signed Ashawn Robinson. He was playing in Detroit, right? No. Am I confusing him with the Detroit guy, the guy they have from Alabama?
I'll figure it out.
Detroit?
Keep going.
On a 2-year, $17 million deal.
He was. Detroit. You are correct.
Andrew Whitworth got re-signed. I don't think that's a huge shock, but he is getting up there. There's that talk about whether he'd last. So they went 3 years, $30 million on that, 12.5 guaranteed. And then also Austin Blythe, they got agreed to a new deal. Have no terms disclosed at this point. So again, a team that we talked about was very, very tight in the cap space room, made some moves and got some things done. None of the contracts look all that crazy to me. Leonard Floyd might be a little bit high paid, but again, 1-year deal. So if they can fit it in this year, it's kind of one of those wait and see if the guy can make it happen. All right, moving on. We'll get to that Miami team when I skipped over. Miami's made a ton of moves. We talked about most of them. I'm going to hit a couple of extras. They signed Adrian Colbert to a 1-year. Sorry, my eyes are going out on me.
1.77. Yeah,
1.8 million. We already talked about Eric Flowers. I believe Jordan Howard was added. Was one that was added the day
2
before.
Years, $10 million.
I like that deal. I think I don't think he needs to be premier. I think they still got to figure out how to get a running back in the draft. Obviously, big money for Byron Jones, which would explain why Dallas had to go out and sign somebody. He got a huge deal for a 5-year, $82 million. Alex Karras. I think he must be related to him.
I think he's
got to be related to him. Ted Karras.
Webster.
Whole line. Got a 1-year, $4 million deal.
What was the theme song? Thank you for being... Well, no, that wasn't it.
No, Thank You for Being a Friend is the Golden Girls.
Yeah, that's right. Damn.
I know the Webster.
Yeah.
There was something about small African-American boys all at one shot between him and Gary Coleman on different
strokes for different folks.
Good shows. I got to admit, I watched them.
Hey, man, they don't make them that good anymore.
No, there's no writing anymore. I think we definitely mentioned Shaq Lawson. I think we mentioned Emmanuel
I don't know that we did,
Agba.
but run through the last two.
He's an edge guy, got 2-year, $15 million contract, $7.5 million guaranteed. And Kyle Van Noy, we talked about, I do know that, but was a 4-year, $51 million deal. So, they are spending the ducats. That is for sure. They're making moves and got a lot of action is going to come in the draft. So this could be a very interesting team. And remember, they're chasing Buffalo now. New England, a lot of questions.
A lot of questions.
All right, why don't you hit the Vikings?
Vikings, C.J. Ham, fullback, re-signed with the Vikings on a 4-year, $12.25 million deal. We talked about them tagging safety Anthony Harris. They agreed to terms with defensive tackle Michael Pierce, 3-year deal, max value of $28 million. $18 million of that is guaranteed. And linebacker Eric Wilson was placed they placed a second-round tender on him because he is a restricted free agent. Moving on, the New England Patriots. We know now.
Are we going to do addition or are we going to do subtraction?
We know now that Mr. Brady is going to the Bucks. So, yeah, they are. This was the big splash. They are in a little bit of I think, a whirlwind, but I think they're trying to play it off like all is cool. I think Belichick's great, but, I don't know if, the talk is he could do it with he's a great coach. He could do it without him, but I don't know how you do it without the GOAT.
They say they have a plan at quarterback,
too. They have a plan,
too.
but
That's
the one thing you could count on was the two Bs there, Belichick and Brady. If all else fails, especially as a Patriots fan, you're like, well, we still got Belichick and Brady. Now you only have half of that. So, All right, let's roll through what they got. Bo Allen, D-tackle, signs a 2-year deal, up to $8 million. Damiere Byrd, wide receiver, signs a 1-year deal. Where is Byrd? In Carolina?
Sounds right.
1 year, $2.5 million deal. Devin McCourty has been re-signed at safety. 2-year, $23 million, 17 guaranteed. Matthew Slater, special teams guy. I think we went over him before. 2-year extension, just under 2.4, and they tagged guard Joe Tooney.
Yep. So, a lot to be seen. To be seen with them.
All right, I'm going to do the rest of the ends, and then you go.
All right.
All right. The New Orleans Saints, we know that they re-signed Drew Brees on a 2-year contract worth roughly $50 million. They also made sure they locked down Taysom Hill, backup quarterback, role player. Placed a first-round tender on him because he is a restricted free agent.
That's a big deal. That tells you he's their heir apparent.
Yep. Defensive tackle David Onyemata re-signed with the Saints for 3 years, $27 million. Here's a big one. They reunite with former safety Malcolm Jenkins, sign him back to the program on a 4-year, $32 million deal with 6.25 guaranteed, and incentives has a max value of $35 million. I think that's a good one. They're bringing the guy back. I think when they lost him, they just couldn't afford him. I don't think they necessarily wanted to part with him. I think it was a money deal. Now they're able to bring him back.
Well, Philly dumped a ton of cash at him, so.
Yeah. But now they're bringing him back. And I don't feel like he did so great in Philly. Again, their deficiencies, especially on the defensive side of the ball, was that secondary. But I'll tell you, when he was in New Orleans a few years back, he did just fine. And have a guy like, a lockdown corner in the backfield like Lattimore. I think this reuniting with his old team might spell some good things for them.
Yep.
My New York Giants, we talked about them bringing in James Bradbury from the Carolina Panthers, cornerback. We also, I think, touched on they brought in Blake Martinez for the Packers, linebacker. Shortly thereafter, they signed Packers' other linebacker, Kyler Fackrell, to a 1-year, $4.6 million deal. Cam Fleming, tackle, signed with the Giants on a 1-year deal with a max value of $4 million. David Mayo, our linebacker, we did re-sign him to a 3-year, $8.4 million deal. We talked about them bringing in Levine Toilolo, tight end from the 49ers. I think that might be more of a backup role if Evan Ingram can't stay healthy. And that's
it's a backup till week 2.
Yeah, and then that's about it. They franchise tag Leonard Williams. The one thing I want to side note, because it is my team, we are number 4 in the draft, and the way things are shaping up, it does look like there could be some takers not too far behind us that want to jump up to guarantee, the Chargers, Dolphins, and or Jaguars to guarantee themselves a quarterback. With all these linebacker signings and re-signings, it makes me a little concerned because I'd love to see Isaiah on my defense, but publicly, GM Gettleman has said time and again how he loves the hog mollies. We know it's either going to be, in my mind, an offensive lineman or Isaiah, unless Chase Young happens to fall. If that trade opportunity comes to fall back just a position or two, we might be able to get some good value for that. And at that point, unless Isaiah falls, which he could still, if they're moving up in our position and we're only, kind of swapping spots or even a couple spots, could still have a shot at them. But the tea leaves in my mind are telling me that we may try to go O-line, drop back, collect picks, take O-line. I'd love to see Isaiah, even though we have all these linebackers. You're right. He could play anywhere. So he's a game changer. New York Jets. I think we talked about them signing George Fant, tackle. Brian Poole, cornerback. We talked about that. Other signings. Alex Lewis, offensive guard, agreed to terms. Those are not disclosed. And center,
was he Baltimore? Is that where he came from?
I
Alex
think so.
Lewis?
Take a look.
Okay.
And they also have they signed center Connor McGovern.
Oh no, he was already on the Jets. Sorry. Lewis.
Yeah. Connor McGovern comes from the Dallas Cowboys. He signs a deal that is, and I just lost it.
It's a $27 million
$27 million on a 3-year with 18 guaranteed.
Young guy, only 22 years old. So that's a pretty interesting signing.
All right, hit us up with the P's.
All right, the Philadelphia Eagles. We already talked about how they brought in Javon Hargrave. They signed Rodney McLeod as a safety. Again, remember they dumped Malcolm Jenkins to a 2-year, $12 million deal. Also agreed to a 1-year deal with Jalen Mills at safety. So they're kind of revamping their secondary, which I think a lot of people expected. And then they also, we talked about this before, acquired in a trade with the Lions for a 3rd and 5th rounder, got Darius Slay. So depending upon what they do, maybe they look to re-up Darby. Darby's a solid, not probably spectacular anymore, but was solid. Maybe now becomes the number 2 corner on their team, but we'll see. We already mentioned that they signed Nate Sudfeld as their backup. But so the big moves here, it's revamping their secondary. The safeties again are not high price guys, but the Darius Slay pick is good, and it's a division where you've got to be able to play some defense there in the back. So they just, I don't know how much stronger they're going to get, but we're going to see.
Yep.
All right, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers.
The Steelers
have done next to nothing at this point. We mentioned they franchised Bud Dupree.
They were a little tight, though.
Yeah, they were. But they agreed to a 3-year, $9.75 million deal with Derek Watt. I believe that is the 3rd of the Watt brothers. He already plays with his other brother, TJ, and we all know about JJ playing down in Houston. Well, at least for a little while until he gets traded for a bag of used practice balls. But we'll get to that.
Or just retires.
You might want to consider that. Getting back to San Francisco, I'm not sure that we hit these. I think we did hit the Jimmy Ward re-signing, which was
we might only did Armstead, but go ahead.
Yeah, he was their safety. A lot of people thought he was going to walk. The safety market got real thin real quick. A lot of people made moves quickly on the safety market. He signed with a 3-year, $28 million deal. A guy's a player. And then also Ben Garland re-signed their center for a 1-year, $2.25 million contract. So, again, they didn't have a lot of room to work with, but at the same time didn't have a lot of holes. Be interesting to see how they maneuver in the wide receiver department, because that is one area that they clearly want to upgrade. And right now things are thinner. May need to look at going in the draft. Okay, so let's do I'll let you take the tees. I'll do Seattle. I'll finish up with Seattle.
Yep.
All right, Seattle Seahawks. We talked about Jacob Hollister. They're expected to sign Bruce Irvin, so a little reunion.
Coming home.
Yeah, a little reunion coming back, but, kind of up there. Oh, God, you're good with all these Samoan names. Cedric Ogbuehi. Ogbuehi, their tackle. Agreed to terms with the Seahawks. We already talked about Greg Olsen. Jaron Reed was one we had already talked about signing, and then they also signed B.J. Finney. Signed with the Seahawks on a 2-year, $8 million deal. He's an offensive lineman. My guess would be he's a swing player because they list him as O-line as opposed to a position. That's probably the expectation for him. I don't know. Anything happened down there in Tampa, South Florida?
We talked about them tagging edge rusher Shaq Barrett, and they re-signed Jason Pierre-Paul to a 2-year, $27 million deal. That was pretty good. I think that's it.
Yeah, is it?
Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. The GOAT, Mr. Tom Brady, will be taking his services to West Florida, Southwest Florida. He is a Tampa Bay Buccaneer agreeing in terms to a deal that will be roughly $30 million per year.
No talk yet as to the length of that deal, so that'll be kind of interesting. We've all heard, Brady wants to play till what he said, 45 at least, so that could be up to 3 years if that's the case. But here's the interesting thing. This is just a dumb side note, but it just tells me about Tampa. So I'm reading, I want to see how people feel about it. Expecting obviously people feel really good. The most common comment by a country mile I saw about this was, I can't wait to see Tom Brady play in a creamsicle Tampa jersey.
I saw
nothing was close to that comment.
I did see some posts of some Tampa fans that were like PO'd that they didn't bring Jameis back. And this is after Brady's the talk about bringing
that
Brady.
Explains your fan base.
So listen, here's the deal, though. I mean,
and I went to Florida State.
Listen, here's the deal. Like one could say, Matt Ryan still has some left in the tank. We don't know. We have Bridgewater now in Carolina, but you got Breeze and you got Brady, and if you throw in Ryan there, that's a handful of games of some high flyers. And you look at Brady. I think Bruce Arians is a player's coach. You look at Brady, what happened, especially every year, really, in New England, but especially this last year with the weapons. Holy mackerel. He just went from having a BB gun to having a friggin' AK-47, man. He's got Godwin. He's got Evans. He may, bring O.J. Howard to where he needed to be. They've got a young back. We'll see if he's still worth a hoot. They've got a defense last year that was one of the best, or if not finished the best in run defense. They've, obviously in their offseason, vamped up the defensive backfield. They could vault themselves in this division. Certainly, I think right now have already put themselves as number 2. In front of Carolina. And right now they're battling with Breeze and the Saints, which is going to be exciting.
I think their defense is still going to have some struggles. The chances that Barrett has the year, especially the start of the year that he had, come down because he's gonna get more attention. But here's the thing that's kind of interesting to me. You're right with those receivers. What I'm curious to see is this is a team that's been void of any really good leadership for a while. And even, Winston that was one of his things, was he's a leader because of, his famous stupid speech, where he said eat a W at Florida State. But then also he kept saying it again, and nobody still knows what the hell that means. But here's the thing. I'm interested to see when Godwin or Mike Evans blows around on Brady and he throws a pick, because Brady's not one to tolerate brain farts. So this is good for them. I think this makes it exciting. I'm really hoping, I've said this before, I'm hoping this doesn't turn out to be like, a Namath in a friggin' Rams uniform kind of thing where you just kind of forget about it. I think Brady's still got a lot left in the tank. The offense certainly will be more consistent, because you think about it, they were in a fair amount of games last year, and in some of those games were games where Winston would have 4 or 5 turnovers. So we know Brady, if there's one thing he doesn't do, he doesn't give the rock away.
Yeah.
So that's going to be, I think that is the major upgrade right there. Certainly, you got to give them the winners of the quarterback carousel. Maybe put Carolina in there, because I think that the Bridgewater deal wasn't brutal. It was big, but it wasn't brutal. $21 million when you got Dak asking for 30 is pretty reasonable. So, gonna be fun stuff to watch. It's one of those let's watch. We're all excited to watch it. Brady's, I'm going to tell you right now, Tampa's going to have probably a minimum of 4, probably 5 primetime games this year.
Sure.
They are going to be a hot team to watch.
Good for them. Them.
Yep.
All right, last 2 teams. The Tennessee Titans. We had talked about them tagging running back Derrick Henry. We talked about the big deal they did, 4 years, $118 million, 62 guaranteed with Tannehill. Brought in Vic Beasley from the Falcons as an edge rusher, 1 year, 9.5 guaranteed. Max value of $12 million. It's a prove-it deal. They did let go of their Pro Bowl defensive tackle Jarrell Casey. And the other signing of note was Dennis Kelly Offensive tackle agreed to terms on a deal to return to the team. It's going to be a 3-year deal, $21 million and 8.75 guaranteed.
Let me say this. I said this the last time when we did the Tennessee review, and you will hear that shortly, that don't be surprised if they didn't have a guy, because there's a lot of talk about them losing Conklin. I said don't be surprised if they've got a guy that they believe can be their fill or void, and that is a starter contract. So I think there you go with the right tackle, and that's good for them because it creates continuity with that team, and I think that could end up being very interesting.
Very good, very good. Last but not least, the Washington Redskins. We talked about Kendall Fuller, cornerback, being signed. We talked about them tagging Brandon Scherf, them signing Wes Schweitzer guard. A couple other things to note. Sean Davis, safety, agreed to a 1-year contract up to $5 million. Old man Thomas Davis announced that he'll be joining his former coach, Ron Rivera, in Washington. So coming from Carolina to Washington, deals not disclosed. J.D. McKissick, I think we brought up, running back, signed a 2-year deal with him. Last but not least, Kevin Pierre-Louis, linebacker, agreed to a 1-year contract worth $3.45 with incentives.
Now, I'll say this. This is a guy, I want to say something about him. This is a guy that came in for the Bears last year. Pierre-Louis. He when they had Roquan go down and Danny Trevathan, they had Kwiatkowski and Lewis. One thing I saw about him, very, very sure tackler, very sound. With him and Thomas Davis, I think what they're going to be lacking a little bit in that linebacking core is speed, but good tacklers, both of them. So we'll see where that one plays.
Okay, so that will wrap up our update. I think it's probably under an hour, hopefully, and we'll get this out to you again. It is Thursday the 19th. This is some haps. We're starting to slow down, but I think that it was necessary. We will bring you the AFC West shortly.